Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the CKC channel. I'm your host, Field Master Calvin Klaassen, and welcome to another episode of Reflection Season 2. And yeah, guys, we're getting close to the end of Season 2. Can you believe it? And I think this was a brilliant season. If the first one was great, this one is even getting better. So hold on to your seats. And yeah, if you're new to the show, just don't forget to press the follow button. Something new that's been added to the channel from since this Saturday, I think, is that subscriptions are open. So if you feel like supporting the channel, you can press the subscribe button and support the channel. But otherwise, feel free to throw in some questions into the chat box tonight to our special guest, who is a former Western Province champion and Western Province League winner. And I will leave it to Dr. Bouah to introduce him properly, since probably the time this guy was playing, I was not even, I didn't know how to push the pieces yet. So for now, let's switch over to the library and over to you, Dr. Bouah.
Calvin, good evening to you and good evening to the viewers. Yes, tonight we've got another special edition of Reflections. And tonight, my guest is none other than Mr. Fasieg Manie. And I've known Mr. Fasieg Manie for probably close on 30 years. And I met him when I came to Cape Town, but his reputation had preceded him. And in Port Elizabeth, where I grew up, we had known of Mr. Manie as well. So it's fantastic. Mr. Manie is a former Western Province schools champion, as well as a Western Province close champion. And he has won with his club, Mariana. He has won the league when he played Board 3 in 1995. And in my professional capacity, I've also known Mr. Fasieg Manie as the principal of Lavender Hill High School in Cape Town. And we're going to talk a bit about Lavender Hill and his term as principal there. But Mr. Fasieg Manie, welcome to the Reflection Show tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, Calvin and Lyndon. Thank you.
Mr. Manie, how did it all start? When did you learn to play chess back in the day?
Yeah, basically taught by a member of my family, my brother, at the age of about 6 or 7. Never took it, seriously. And then when I came to high school at Livingston, then the interest was sparked. And I remember we played a match against Westerford High. Now we're talking the dark days of apartheid. They came to our school, and I found this out only a bit later. The coach was somebody called K.F. Kirby. If you go back in history, you'll know he's a former South African chess champion and the editor for many years of the South African Chess Player.
Yeah.
A man whose knowledge of chess at the time, in my view, was in fact amongst the very best. And he was the coach of the Westerford High team. And amazingly, at the age of 13, in what was then called Senate 6, I was able to beat the opposition, and that kind of ignited and sparked my interest in chess. So essentially, Senate 6 at Livingston High School in Claremont.
No, thanks for that, Fasieg. And I mean, it's when I listen to that, then it means at some stage you guys were Livingston playing against Westerford. And who were some of the other players that were your, let's call it your peers during your high school years that you competed with at the Western Province schools level?
Well, they were many, but the one person whom we all well know, I don't think he's active anymore, would be Howard Goldberg. He was kind of the superstar and the blue-eyed boy, and the pun is not intended because I also think that he also happens to have blue eyes.
Okay.
But blue-eyed boy as in he had kind of a confidence about him, almost a swagger. He would move and then get up to look at other boards. Now, initially, I thought, hey, but to walk around, you actually treating your opponent with contempt. But that is what chess players do, as I found out only a bit later. Then I also used to walk around, you
Uh,
know. People don't understand that. But that is
yeah.
how you kind of, relax. You look at what's happening at other boards. But he was very good. And he was also very well coached. I think he
Mm,
played for Cape Town Chess Club. He played at a very high level.
yeah.
But just to fast forward to 1975, so we're playing in the Western Province School Championship, and in round 6, we had both scored 5 out of 5. So then we were drawn with the Buchel system. We both had 5 out of 5, so I had to play him. So I had the white pieces, and he had the black pieces, and he played a line of the Najdorf, which I know very well. So he plays a6 in Sicilian, and I go bishop to g5. He plays e6, I play e4. He plays b7, I play queen f3. He plays
Yeah.
queen to c7, and then he makes a mistake. Instead of playing knight to d7, he plays b5. Now here I'm 16 years old, limited opening theory, but my gut tells me that's wrong. You first need to play knight to d7 to reinforce e5, and maybe we can look at that game a bit later.
I think
But
we should.
but on a
I played
serious
through it.
thing, I
Yeah.
think for close to 25 minutes now in schoolboy chess, that's an eternal
Yes.
time,
Yeah.
But I tell myself this is wrong, and over the board, and I think that's probably one of my best games ever. I was able to refute the mistake, and I use my white bishop to take the pawn on b5. Years later, I realized that is something that was done very often,
Mm.
But to have done that over the board, I think says something about my understanding of the game of chess. But
And your
that was a
bravery. And your
highlight.
bravery.
Yeah. And because everything then was thematic and
Mm.
sequential, I was able to understand why it's wrong for these reasons. But I caused a bit of horror amongst the other players. How can this? And if I don't mind, if I refer to race here, this so-called colored boy, the only person of color at the time able to beat the up and coming superstar from Sea Point High at the time, and I went on to, win that tournament. And yeah, that will always be a very pleasant memory for me.
Well, I mean, it's a good memory because, of course, Howard is a very good player, and I mean, I can tell the viewers that I was still playing against Howard Goldberg in the SA Closed Trials in 1994, and a good number of league games. And in fact, Howard is today still he still has a swagger, by the way, because he's
Yeah,
also
yeah, yeah,
he's also a
yeah,
boxing promoter as well.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Fasieg, those sounds like they were good years for you and your other type of when you played against those schoolboy trials. Was everything integrated in those years in
Man,
74,
as I
75?
said, you're talking now early to mid 70s.
Yes.
So what happened was that they used to invite Livingston High School and sometimes Harold Cressy. Otherwise, those were the only schools of color,
Okay.
And so for me to actually to come there, you speaking of a young person, me with a particular background, you can't but help feel kind of out of place. But the one thing which we have in common is the love for this
For
beautiful
chess.
game, you
Yes.
know. Yeah. So chess is the so-called equalizer. Over the board, you engage a person mentally, intellectually, psychologically. The disadvantage I had was a lack of opening theory. I never
Okay.
had a coach. I had to basically teach myself. Look, I used to go to the local library. There was
Right.
one in town called City Park. I don't think it exists anymore, but they had a number chess books and
Yes.
a magazine called Chess Life and Review, which I used
Mm.
to take out and
Yes.
devour whatever was in there, you know. But I had a distinct disadvantage in that I was the only player at Livingston of a certain standard, you know.
Okay.
And what I did was to impress the learners at the school by playing simultaneous exhibitions. And then very often in one interval of 25 minutes, I used to play about 15 players simultaneously, and they couldn't believe it. They thought I was a absolute genius, and perhaps I am. Who knows, eh? That's easy. No, look, and then I used to beat every single player. And
Yes.
I remember my teacher, Mr. Birch, at the time, the so-called head of sport, was astounded, and even the other people, they were all inspired and awestruck. How can one person in a space of 25
Man,
minutes in one
yeah.
interval be 20 players, and you go from board to board and you just look and you play? But they don't know. You internalize those things. You
Of course.
understand teams.
Yes.
You understand tactics and strategies. And for them, as I said, it's just almost unbelievable. Yeah, but those were very fond memories for me.
But that is, well, whatever happens, that is still an astounding feat to play 20 to 25 players over a lunch break and quickly beat them. I mean, that
Yeah,
does take some. Now, Fasieg, I read somewhere that you also hold the record for having played 52 hours nonstop somewhere in the
yeah.
early
No, no.
70s.
No, so what happened at the age of 15? You see, by that time there was a newspaper by the name of Cape Herald. And
Okay.
I used to make the news quite often.
Yes.
This 14-year-old made news. I came back third in the South African schools. With a 14-year-old, went to
Yeah.
PE, your hometown, flew by plane for the first time, played at UPE. UPE, I remember very vaguely, is built on a hill. And I stayed with people, was Galvindale. I had to take
Mm.
a taxi and a bus, and I used to walk up this hill. It took me probably 15 minutes. When I
Yeah.
actually got to the venue, I was very tired even. But be that as it may, I came third in the SS school, which is phenomenal. In fact, I
Yes.
might have won. Uh, I had a win, but then I overreached Einstein in the Sicilian Dragon, which I also know very well.
Yes.
Had I not been, the enthusiasm of youth, I thought I've got this guy. Now, the late Mr. Van der Horst, who was the head of Mariana Chess Club, used to have a saying, I had this guy stone cold. So we used to that word quite often. And I really had, but I overreached. I sacrificed, lost. And but for that loss, I would have won the SS school at the age of 14 nogal.
Yes. That would have
But
been a
but
great achievement, but coming third is still a
yeah, but
fantastic
but be
achievement.
that as it may, that's another very fun memory, and actually quite a major achievement. At the age of 14, and nationally, and also the only person of color. And then you had, I mean, you know some of the names, like Roger Shackers and the Sullivan twins and so on. And I think
Yeah.
that was quite amazing. And I didn't really know of, at that time, Southern Transvaal, and they were extremely strong. And Eddie Price was the coach, and all sorts of people whose names are now not able, to remember. But yeah, well, I think at the time, as a 14-year-old, that was quite an achievement.
Now, Fasiq, we thanks for that, and
Oh,
certainly
so
in
sorry. Oh,
1960,
the question about the
yes,
fair.
the 52
Okay, so
hours.
what happened? So I was in the news, and at 15 years old, there was a place, event called Athlone Fair, and then to raise funds, you probably know Farid Arnold,
Yeah.
uh, of Bella Chess Club.
Yes.
He was in matric when I was at 6. He was the head boy, and he was working for the Herald. And maybe that explains why I was in the paper so often in the Herald.
Okay.
you know. Um, and so he said, and he put it to me, why don't you and I go for the chess record? which would have meant playing chess for 60 hours, not 52 hours. The record was 52 hours. So we played from Thursday morning when the fair opened until Saturday night, until 1 minute past 12. Now, it equated to about, at the time, 60 hours. Now,
Sure.
for 15-year-old to stay awake. And so we raised the princely sum of 123 Rand in 1974 for charity. So maybe
Yes.
one day I'll go to heaven. Who knows? You know, who knows?
Well, well done to
But
you and Farid.
123 Rand in 1974 was a good few Rand. And
No,
that
was a
we handed over. So people had to pay to play me. And then we played with that old clock, not the digital one, one
the
way
Russian
to
white
bang
one.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And so we played from Thursday morning till Saturday evening.
Sure.
Yeah, and for many years that record actually stood.
Well, I must say that that's a feat, and Fasieg, I'm not sure if I'd be able to at that age to have played 60 hours straight. But well done to you and Farid on that side. And when you were engaging in the schools tournaments, as you said now, with Livingston and Harold Cressy, was it an enjoyable time? Because I mean, this was the dark days of apartheid
Yeah,
in the
look,
70s.
you see, apartheid is the laws are horrible. They are cruel. They're inhumane, and people are brainwashed. So when I actually played against people on the other side of the fence, as it were, for one, if you don't mind, if I refer to a race, white schoolboys. So initially, some of them may have wondered, who's this person? What is he doing here? But once you start to play, once you interact, you begin to realize these white players, this is something artificially contrived. It's not normal. Here is a person, the only difference between him and us is the pigmentation. Otherwise, we had the common language of chess, which you all love. And you
Mm.
play, you interact, and you're normal. But Leslie London is one person who actually stood out, for me. We played, together for a number of years, probably 3 to 4 years. Of course, because of apartheid, I didn't see him socially, but when I saw him at chess tournaments, we were normal. And for a few years afterwards, after matric, we did meet up, but not too often,
Mm.
And then for the first time in many years was 2019. I saw him at the chess league, you
Yes,
know.
he
Yeah,
still plays. He still
yeah,
plays. No, I mean I've got a good relationship also with Professor Leslie London, and he's out there in observatory, and he plays for Cape Town Chess Club. So
yeah.
it's good, obviously, as you said, to have had those relationships. Fasieg, tell me when did you start playing for Mariana Chess Club?
Look, Mariana was formed in 1978. I was one of the founding members with Gordon Lawrence, Frank van der Horst. There was somebody called Isaac Peterson, Trevor Armstrong, and the very famous Kasim Slamang, whom you all know very well. Umar Iso kind of joined because he's slightly younger than me, 5, maybe 4, 6 years. I'm not sure. He actually joined a bit later. And when I kind of opted out of the club about 1984 or thereabout, he kind of took over in many ways with Kasim and carried the flag with Warren Rossiter amongst other people. But the club was conceived and formed as an answer to apartheid. You will recall the South African Council on Sport, otherwise known as SACOS, no normal sport in an abnormal society. So at a certain point, post 1976 Soweto riots, there was a feeling that you cannot play on the so-called other side and be a fighter against the iniquitous system of apartheid. So I made the move post 1976 along with us. Look, I was young, naive, and so on, and to move away. Then we formed Mariana Chess Club and formed what was then the Western Province Chess Association, and which morphed then eventually into CAPSA, of which you were um, a founding member, with Bertie van Wyk played a pivotal part, and all the rest of it. Yeah, but Manyanani, in non-racial terms, one of the first clubs. Fast forwarding to Steinitz, was formed in about 1980, if I'm not mistaken, and these young
77.
upstarts.
Yeah.
Well, maybe sooner, but I interacted with from about 1980,
Yes.
and we had a venue, the Muslim Assembly, it was called, in Newfields, and they just rocked up there with a taxi, I think it was, these youngsters, and wanted to play against us. I was maybe third year university, and Gordon Lawrence, a little bit older than me, and they just wanted to play against us. And to be honest, they had a lot to learn still, but they were very keen. The one thing you knew about them, they lived and breathed, chess. And just to fast forward, for many years, we were rivals. Of course, the first year or three, we should beat them, regularly, because of our experience and all the rest of it. But they had a never say die attitude, until eventually, and history will show, they're now by far the best club, not just in the Western Cape, but in South Africa, etc. But yeah, but those were good old days. But what they used to do is, we had to actually choose people in board order, and they cheated a little bit. I hope they don't mind my saying so. But they used to mix up the board order. They want to know who's in the team. They first and see who's available from Manyanani, and then they switch the board order a little bit. Who's going to be white and who's going to be black, and so on. That's what I vaguely recall. But not long after they joined the Western Province Association, they started beating the other club, and they had tremendous depth. They had about 15, 20 players, at the time, who came in regularly, decided to coach, and we know about about Roland and his sons, and coaching and so on, and they picked that up very soon. The importance of opening theory, being coached, and so on.
Now, Fasieg, thank you for that. And just for interest for Calvin and the viewers, when the Western Province Chess Association was formed, Mariana won the league for the first 2 years, then Grassy Park, and then Steinitz won the league.
Something like that. Yeah.
So there was a lot of a good rivalry between Grassy Park, Mariana, Steinitz. And would you comment on the Grassy Park rivalry a bit?
Yeah. Look, they had a number of solid players like Abdullah Murad, Jamil Kirdin, they had Bernard Henry, and later on Malcolm Fredericks, they had Clive Kearns, they had John Bartman.
Yes.
From Athlone, of course, do not forget Athlone, Shabir Baudin, John Hess, Andre van Reenen, Amin Karim. Athlone, though, I don't think ever won the league, because they lacked players on boards 4 to 6,
Yes.
But yeah, but Athlone Chess Club was the other very good club at the time.
Now, Fasieg, when I looked at your CV that you sent me, I noticed there that when you were a young teacher, you were also a coach of many of the young players: Maxwell Solomon, Dion Solomons, Ashley Daniels, all the up and coming players that became household names later on. How was your interaction as a school teacher?
Look, what happened when my first year of teaching, I'm obviously beginning to reveal my age here, 1981. My first year of teaching, very young, enthusiastic, and starry-eyed, and then the principal, Mr. Ritchie, very well-known educationist, still alive today.
Yes.
Look, he is a principal. He isn't able to manage the Western Province chess team, the schools teams, and from 1981 they received colors to play interprovincially.
Right.
And he knew about me and my chess achievements, and he asked me to be the coach and the manager of the Western Province team. And in that team, you had um, you had Jeremy Lewis, you had Sean Willenberg, you had Andrew Telmarcus, and at a certain point you had Ashley Daniels, and then also later the likes of Clive Kearns and John Bartman within the next 2 to 3 years. And then 1983, 84, it was Maxwell and 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 John Solomons, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was asked by USASA or USASA, as it was called then, to be the manager coach of the SASA team as well from 1984 till about 84, 85, 86. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so for many years. So I remember having to coach these people, and I was teased, you know, like on the bus. How do we coach? We were in the same bus as the volleyball team and the rugby, and they are all, you know, macho guys, you know, every muscle is numbered, you know, and bold guys, you know. To cut a long story short, so they teased me, you know. Now, how do you guys practice? So I made a joke. You know what they do? I actually give them some mathematical sums and theorems to do. Then I was working out of the head. And for half an hour in the bus from there to PE, when we went to Johannesburg, these people used to believe it. You know, that, you know, weet jy wat hulle doen? Hulle moet theorems doen in hulle kop. You know, they used to believe that. No. Look, I had to you know, come up with my own, let's call it, you know, content for a coach. I had to
Yes.
conceive certain things, used to write it down, and then you had that old the physical board where you had to pack the pieces. You know,
Yes.
there's the board, Mr. Van Reenen had one, and we had to pack the pieces like that and
Yeah.
remove it, etc. That actually went down very well. You know, I had enough, you know, opening theory in my head to be able to explain, like
Yeah.
what is a rook live, the sacrifice at f6 or c3, the importance of you know, of the rook on the seventh rank,
Yes.
um, to open lines, to have a monster piece, you know, all sorts of things, to have, you know, two bishops, the so-called the bishop's pair, all those kinds of things, little bits and pieces. But then what we also did was to actually plan, what do you play against e4? And
Of
we
course.
we kind of played some gambity chess, you know, like Evans Gambit and Kyoko, you know, piano and all sorts of
Yes.
things like that, you know. And in the main, it worked very well. But there's one guy, and I still blame in Jeremy Lewis, 1981. Nazim Slami took it away from us. You know, he was the top player from PE.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
Jeremy at the time in 1981 was odds on favorite. He was, in fact, my view, the best at the time. But he played against Slami and lost, also
Yeah.
because of kind of overconfidence. But Maxwell and Dion, I could see from the outset they were just one up on Sean and Andrew, you know, Marcus
Yes.
and Jeremy, Ashley Daniels, and so on. They were just that. They just had that extra, and of course they played with U92 in the
In
Olympiad.
the Olympiad.
But no, they had a natural gift for the game, and I remember that Dion didn't want to play E4. I told him, you all play E4. You know, that is what we are going to base on. And I was influenced by Fischer, 1972, Kaspersky, you know, World Championships and so on, which took the world by storm at the time. But Dion played English already. That was how he played,
From his
you know.
teenage years.
Exactly. Now, for a 15-year-old, to play what I would call exponential chess, to grind out wins, to win
Yeah,
that kind of battle, very positional as opposed to tactical.
to
And
the
and
E4,
and
yeah.
and last week on your show, what emerged, and I would agree with that. Often, your chess style is in many ways a reflection of who you are as a human being. How you actually approach. So Dion is that person who thinks about things very clearly, doesn't kind of rush into things. And that is how I knew him as a young person. He didn't speak a lot. Yeah, in fact, I wouldn't say that he kept to himself. I wouldn't say that, but he was just that kind of person. But he would win, and some people won after 10, 15, 20 moves against in weak opposition. You play a weaker player, but just grind out the win, playing the correct move every time. You
No,
know
but as you said, every player has his own style, and
exactly.
that. Now, Fasieg, let's hold on for a moment because it's 7:30 already. Calvin, have you got one or two questions for us from the viewers before I go on to my next questions? Fasieg, thank you very much. I'm just going to hand you over to Calvin for a minute,
Yeah, sure,
and then I'm going to come back.
sure.
Okay, guys, I'm back. Interesting stuff thus far, and let's take it from the top. Thanks to everybody for the questions and the comments in the chat. I'll try to. I'm gonna cover all the questions. It's not too much, guys. You can still get them rolling in, but I'll also read a comment here and there. So yeah, welcome and good evening to everyone once again. Let's see. King Ulster saying London is in the principal's office again. LOL. So of course, and Mark Lewis is in the building as well. He says it was always a great challenge when Steinitz played Manyanani. I think I played Fasieg in 1981 for the first time when we played the Sicilian and we drew. So Mark, very specific with his memory over there. Thanks for the comment, Mark. Um, and then we have, let's see. Then Mark continued by saying the Manyanani team were a closely knit team. How did that all start? I think you touched on that, Fasieg. Is there anything else that you can add maybe to that? How did the team
Yeah,
start
look,
specifically?
we were more or less the same age. We came from the same era and background. We decided for political reasons that we aligned with the South African Chess Federation. And so we formed Manyanani Chess Club. And then, we had about 15 members, of whom six we were in the A team. But as you say, we used to meet socially and so on at the house of somebody called Isaac Peterson, and then afterwards Frank van der Horst. In fact, many of the matches and Mark and other people can concur. We used to play in his double garage, and his wife used to serve us some biscuits and cool drink every single Saturday. So Mark is absolutely right. I remember those days very well, and of course, and Mark I remember extremely well. Comes from chess royalty in the Western Cape. So Mark, you're the man.
Okay, thanks for those comments, Fasieg. And yeah, we don't have any more questions, but we have quite a bit of comments. So let me just read a bit here. So Llewellyn J as well. Welcome, Llewellyn. He says, I also joined Manyanani at the time it was formed. And then he goes on to say, I remember as Manyanani was on its way, was it to a club match about, he commented, or I commented about the modern Benoni, and the late Lionel van der Horst asked, what's special about it? And I replied, the fact that it's modern. Everyone burst out laughing. A moment there by Llewellyn J. And then Hibernator is also in the house. Hibernator, of course, Maxwell. And Maxwell has a few, quite a bit to say here. Maxwell says, Fasieg is a legendary figure in the non-racial chess scene. All the major talents in Western Province literally came through his hands. Jeremy Lewis, Andrew Del Marcus, Willenberg brothers, Dion Solomons, Clive Cairns, John Bartman, Fauzi, Basardin, and many others. Of course, Fasieg was our coach at school, Julian Mulder, and me, Maxwell Solomon, he says. Can Fasieg tell us more about Lionel van der Horst, a legendary Sakos chess administrator? That's our last question.
Yes, look, Lionel van der Horst, together with Andre van Rienen, must be regarded as the fathers of non-racial chess. And Lionel van der Horst is one of the unsung sporting heroes. And it's very sad that he hasn't been acknowledged appropriately. Um, I think Mananani, and I wasn't active at the time, had a tournament in his honor. But I think he should be acknowledged, as I said, in a much better way, because he did a lot, not just for Mananani Chess Club, for non-racial chess as a whole. Yes, but he did a lot for me. When I was a student, he used to pick me up. You lived in Penate State. I lived in Lansdowne. He took me to our various matches, and he would lift and actually caught about 8 young people in his car. One of those, dedicated people. He was a teacher at Livingston for many years as well, and he was that kind of person. Pick up every single person. He would drop you off at your home. And I don't know when he used to arrive home after having to live 8 people, and his house was available for our use as a venue, because at that time we didn't have access to venues like halls and so on. The school didn't really have a school hall, etc. And so absolutely, he will stand out in my mind as an absolute legend of the game, but not really recognized, which is quite sad and unfortunate.
No,
Okay,
thanks, Calvin, and
thank
thanks,
you.
Fasieg, for that. And certainly, we hope that this type of reflection series will actually uplift the names of those unsung heroes, as you've indicated, Fasieg. I want to ask 2 or 3 questions before we go to the games, Fasieg. I've also gotten to know you as a principal of a school that is in one of Cape Town's tough areas in Lavender Hill. When did you start at Lavender Hill? Because in my view, there has been a change in Lavender Hill from the time that you took over till the time that you retired a year or 2 ago. When did you start, and what were your first impressions of Lavender Hill High School when you got there?
Yeah, look, I started in Mitchell's Plain in the early 80s, and Maxwell was a learner at the time there in the mid 80s, matriculated from there. Then when I became HOD, I was appointed at Lavender High in the late 80s. Out of gangland, one of the most violent areas. People are poverty stricken, substance abuse. I think we all know that side, unfortunate side of Cape Town. To fast forward, I became the principal in the early 2000s, and I had a very simple approach or philosophy, and that is you can be mired in negativity. You can think, why me? It's unfortunate. Why must it be at the school? Or you can lift yourself up from your bootstrap and say, yes, I recognize my socioeconomic context, which is very challenging, which is what I did. And I had buying from the staff. And so what we did systematically, incrementally, exponentially was year after year to improve the infrastructure of the school. And Lyndon, for the record, you yourself, you're very modest about it, but in your position in DCAS, chief director, you've done a lot for schools, if I can say that, together with Paul Hendricks. So when I retired in 2019, the school sporting infrastructure is almost second to none. So kids are off the streets because you see youth at risk need to be occupied in a healthy way, in a constructive way. Otherwise, there's going to be the temptation to engage in the ills of society, like gangsterism and substance abuse. So you need to present them alternatives which are viable, achievable. And sport, as we all know, is a wonderful instrument or vehicle to counteract the scourge of gangsterism and drugs. So by the time I retired with the massive help of DCAS, we now have a mini stadium with a clubhouse. We've got two astroturfs, a rugby field, soccer field, athletics field, and a softball field, which doesn't look too dissimilar to turfle. I mean, it's phenomenal. So you have hundreds of kids at Lavendy as we speak now. After, well, I mean, we still have COVID, but with the new so-called protocols, people are now playing sport, and I think that is a legacy I'd like to believe I in part was able to leave behind. Of course, I was part of a collective, but not only in terms of sport and extramural activities, but also academically. The year I retired, we had a pass rate of 89.9. So I'm happy to say, maybe in my humble way, my insignificant way, I played a part to effect a turnaround strategy at a school. And I think this, if that school can be used as a model of excellence, then the multiplier, the knock-on effect of that will be such that we can turn around the nation as a whole.
Fasieg, thank you very much for that. And I mean, you're the for me, I've watched Lavender Hill for probably about 10 years because I got to DCAS in 2011, and I've seen that turnaround. That from my initial meeting with you and the things that you were promoting at the school has been phenomenal, and we thank you for that. And when I was doing my research, I also picked up, Fasieg, that you received an award and an accolade from Minister Schaefer a few years ago. Which award was that?
In 2016, the ASP, the after school program, I won the award for, it was a third, so that would be bronze. Just we had in short, though, the award was for extramural activities which were vibrant. It was happening. The school was alive. The school didn't stop at 3 o'clock, in spite of the shooting and the killing and the mayhem and the gang warfare, until about 5 o'clock, 5:30. People were playing sport after school, and at that time our fields weren't actually completed yet. So people were playing amongst thorns in the almost the bushes, in patchy grass, softball and the like. And so it was kind of in recognition for that. Yeah, so that was in 2016.
Fasieg, thank you very much for that. And as I said in the ad, you are an inspirational principal, and even now that you're retired, I'm told you're still a principal.
Yeah, no, what happened was that in September of last year, I hope it doesn't sound like Muhammad Ali, but I was asked to help out at school for 2 months initially in Houtbay, Sidikamba High, a so-called Blackton Township school serving the informal settlement of Imizamayetu. So initially for two months, because they had a pass rate of 40% in 2019, the year I retired. And in September of last year, the school had a leadership vacuum, so I asked me to step in initially for 2 months. I must have done a reasonably good job, so they asked me to stay on until the rest of this year. So yeah, I'm back as a principal, albeit just till the end of the year. Yeah.
So, Fasieg, we wish you well there at Silikamfa, and we know that you're going to bring that pass rate up from 40% to where it should be to get close to 100%. And we will be when we interview you for season 4, I'm sure, Calvin, we will have some more things. So, yeah. Fasieg, what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to a few of your games, and then we're just going to hand over to Calvin for a moment. Calvin, over to you.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna go over to the chessboard just in a moment. Just one more question here, or a few comments in the chat box, guys. One from Mark Lewis again. Van Derek Horst was one of the first arbiters in our circle. Thanks, Mark. And then Big Spy Bosovic says, "Great to hear Fasieg speaking after all these years. I was in Standard 6 in 1974, and he was one of the stars of schools chess at the time, along with Howard Goldberg, Leslie London, Paul Goldberg, and Robbie Fagan. We both had more hair at the time, though. Barry Heimer." So that's from Barry.
I
And
remember him. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and then King Ulster has got a question here for you. This is the last. Is this the last one? Oh, Dr. Shabir also says, "Hello, Chief Fasieg, our legend." Dr. Shabir is also in the house. And then King Ulster is the last one here in the chat box, says, "Hi, Fasieg. Any basic starting suggestions for bringing together talented and driven chess youngsters, sorry, with limited resources and knowledge, as you mentioned with your previous school pupils and clubs? So any advice for them?"
Putting me on the spot for somebody who's been out of chess for so many years. I would rather take my cue from the mighty Steiner's Club. If there's a model to follow, then the Mark Lewises of the world, the Willenbergs, and the dad, Ken, whom I remember with love and affection as well. I think they should actually spearhead that and to follow their advice, because what they have achieved against the odds is one of my fondest memories, to be honest. Against the odds.
Okay, thanks, Fasieg. Fasieg, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. And King also just says, very inspiring history and stories. And thanks for answering the question on what is keeping you busy at the moment. So, okay, great stuff, guys. So we're gonna switch over to the chessboard now, and let's have a look at some of Fasieg's most memorable games. And you can let us know. Are we starting with the one you played against Mr. Levine or what?
Yeah,
let's go to the Benny
okay,
Levine
let's-
game, Calvin, and then
Okay.
you can just take us through that, and Fasieg can indicate where he wants to pause and perhaps
Okay.
describe.
Okay, right. So I'll take it from here with the pieces, guys. So Fasieg is playing with the white pieces, and Benny Levine is playing with the black pieces in this one, guys.
Yeah.
So pawn to e4, e5, knight to f3, knight c6, pawn to d4. So pawn takes pawn, knight d4. So it looks like a Scotch
Sorry.
game.
No, sorry. No, that's not, sorry.
Yeah. Is that not the correct game?
That's not the game of Levine. I don't know.
Okay, London sent me this one. Is this the wrong one,
No.
London?
That's the wrong one. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a Scotch game. So which one do you have? Do you have the game there, Fasieg? Can you read out the moves?
Let me go over this. Is e5.
Yeah, e4, e5.
C5.
Sorry,
C5,
e4.
Calvin.
E4. C5.
Oh, e4, c5. E4, c5.
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, is this an open Sicilian?
Yes.
Okay, I just replaced
the dragon.
I replaced okay, London.
Sorry, one second,
C5
quickly.
looks like e5. So all right, let's just overwrite that again. So e4, c5. Okay, let's just wait for Fasieg to actually return. But it's basically the same moves, guys. It's just I thought c5 was e5.
Okay.
Let's remove this.
So e4, c5, knight to f3,
knight c6,
knight c6.
D4.
Okay, then d4.
Takes. Knight takes.
Yeah, then knight to
F6.
d4.
Yeah, knight to f6, knight c3,
knight to c3, and
pawn to
then
d6.
he plays d6.
Yeah.
Okay. Then bishop to c4.
Okay, bishop c4.
And now you could go e6 here.
Yeah.
And then this is for me a version of Sicilian. In a certain extent, he went for the dragon, which
G6.
he went to g6, and I played bishop to e3.
Yeah.
Okay, then bishop to g7. All of this is quite standard. f3 because you want to prevent knight to g4.
Yeah.
Then he castled. I
Yes.
then go queen to d2. All of this is standard. This is all in the book. He
Yeah.
plays bishop to d7, and then I castled queen side. Then he played a move that isn't played very often. What normally happens? You play queen to e5 or rook to c8. Instead, he went for a version or a variation which I'm not too familiar with, but not very popular. Nothing wrong with it. It's just that I'm not too familiar. It took me kind of out of my
Surprise.
comfort zone for playing queen to b8.
I think I've
So
seen the move, but
instinctively,
not the main line. Yeah, definitely not main
yeah,
line.
not the main line. I go then h4. I stick to my plan, which is to attack on the king side and to pry open the h file.
Yes.
Then he
Fasieg,
goes rook.
just
Yeah.
pause there for a moment. Can you maybe perhaps just move slightly to your left again? You're out of
Yeah. Okay.
zone there. There we go. Much
That's much
better.
better.
Thanks. Now we can see you
So,
again.
so Fasieg, what year was this game played?
It was in '92 at the Mackie.
Ah, okay.
92
Okay.
Mackie. Okay. Okay. So H4.
Okay. Then he plays rook to c8.
Yeah.
Now obviously, if you're not alert, he's going to capture knight on d4, and then my white bishop is on pre.
Yes.
So obviously you need to retreat. So bishop to b3, not a surprise. Then he shocked me by playing a5 immediately. I would have expected him to go h5 to prevent my playing h5 myself.
Yeah.
So I attack on the king side. He attacks on the queen side. So a5 is his move. Okay, I thought to myself, no problem. But remember, this is my first tournament in 8 years. I was on study leave at the time, so I was off for a year. I was at home. I thought, let me play in a tournament, and I entered it absolutely cold.
Okay.
It could have been round 2. So I then go h5,
Here we
which
go.
is, and that is typical. You make the pawn sacrifice to pry open the h file,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then horror of horrors, he plays a4. I thought, what the heck now? This
Okay.
is a shock. But now, if he's now attacking my white bishop, and he's also going to pry open the A file. So what do I do here? Okay.
Okay. It's interesting. It's interesting to see that white, you are trying to sack a pawn on the H file, and black is trying to sack a pawn on the A file. Both sides are
Now,
trying to open up.
unbeknown to me, the queen b8 variation of the dragon is very familiar with. So here I need to make a decision. And I thought, let me call your bluff. And I take the pawn on a4.
Okay, but
Okay.
you first took on c6, right?
No, sorry. No, sorry. I first took the knight
Take
on
on c6.
c6. Sorry.
Just to point
The
out
knight
to
on
the
c6.
viewers, if you take bishop takes a4, then black has this knight takes d4 possibility with some business
No,
there.
yeah. So you see, I did not want to take with just to actually go back.
Yeah.
If I don't take on c6, and I just take with my knight, for example, on a4, my
Yeah.
knight on c3, then he would take my knight on d4, and then my knight then will be lost because the rook on the open file on the bishop, his bishop on d7,
Hitting
then he will win
a4,
the
yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
So obviously I thought, okay, let me first simplify knight to c6, and expected bishop take c6, and then I would play bishop to d5.
Okay.
So my white bishop then has a square to go to. Instead, he shocked me by playing to take the knight with his pawn. So now I see his plan. So the queen then has an open file, and it's going to hit my b2 and that dark monster bishop of his known as the dragon bishop is lurking in the background. So now I have to be very careful because he's got moves like knight takes e4 at a certain point. He thinks c3 and also b2 possibly. Then I thought, okay, I can't see an immediate win for you. Let me take knight takes a4.
Okay.
Okay. Then he shocks me. He takes rook takes a4.
There we go. Okay.
Now, if I take it with if I take bishop takes a4, he will play knight takes e4, and then he hits me, and then I'm dead lost. So I'm going to I'm going to pause here for a few seconds, and if viewers can come up with the move that I played, and that's why I'm quite pleased with this game.
Okay, so just to point out, guys, to the viewers, b takes c4 was just played, but black has played a4, which is the real threat. The bishop on c6 on b3 is hanging. So the question is, what should white play in this position? Shout out to our first subscriber, by the way, Early B in the chat. Welcome. So yeah, white to play. Viewers, can you give us some suggestions?
So what is the position now? Is the knight on a4 or is this the position?
No.
Apologies.
He took my knight a4 with his rook on the a5.
Okay, this is the thanks Landon for pointing that out. So knight takes a4, rook takes a4 was played. So white to play in this position.
So he's now a piece up. Now if I take the rook on a4 with my white bishop, he will play knight to e4 and win, because he attacks my queen and he's gonna mate me on b2.
Yeah.
So just to move on, I play e5.
Okay, Mr. Lewis in the chat has also suggested e5 just now. So Mr. Lewis on point here. So e5 played. Wow. So you leave the rook and you attack the knight with e5.
I leave the rook. I play e5. Now what that does is to cut off the supply from bishop at g7 to b2. So what that now does is that dark bishop now is paralyzed. So what he then did was he moved his rook back to a8.
Okay.
Now what I could simply have done was to capture his knight. e5 takes f6. Yes. Instead, I'm ambitious here. I do not want to go for the piece. I instead play hg. I capture the pawn on g6. Now what happens is knight is attacked and my white bishop. Now this is typical of white playing against the dragon. That is why they often try to get rid of the white bishop by going the sequence. Then the knight on c6 goes to e5 and then c4 to force me to
trade off the bishop on b3.
Yeah. Anyway, what he then does is he underestimates me here, I think, or maybe he did not look far ahead. He instead, after thinking for about 10 minutes, he takes my pawn on e5.
Okay, so would you say the safer option would be to take on g6, h takes g or something?
What he actually should have done was to actually capture the pawn and allow me to take the
knight eventually.
I still have a winning position. And if we can just go over there, what I would have done was, say for example, it's a mistake to play the pawn on d6 to take my pawn on e5. What he should have done was to play hg.
Yes.
If he did that, what I would then have done was to go bishop to h6.
Okay.
Then he actually shouldn't obviously exchange, because then he is fatally weakened on the dark squares. So he should then go bishop to h8, just push it back.
Yeah.
But then I've got a killer move. I play queen to g5. What queen to g5 then means is I would threaten queen to g6, mate. Well, almost mate, because of my white bishop eyeing the pawn on f7.
Yeah.
So he can't actually capture that. Now he's absolutely paralyzed.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
And remember, the knight is still under attack. So even that wouldn't have worked. But
Yeah.
what he played was far worse, and it allowed me a mating a sequence, in fact, an attack that was unstoppable. So what he then did was to play d times e5.
Yeah.
Now that is lost. So here it's a matter of technique, but you need to play accurately, because his queen still eyes b2, and the rook has an open file. So what I then did was I played bishop takes f7 check.
Okay.
Now wherever he goes, he's in serious trouble. He chose to go queen to f8. In the corner is even worse, because then I could have played rook takes h7. He takes with the knight, and then I bring the other rook over, and then he's dead.
Knight to follow, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he went queen to f8.
King to f8.
Sorry. He went king to f8. Then I played bishop h6.
Removing the critical
Now
defender.
I exploit that dark bishop weakness.
Yeah.
So you of course can't capture that. Otherwise, I will capture his dark bishop, and then it's mate. So what he did was he first took G. Now I need to be careful here, because my bishop on f7 is now on pre. So I first had to take the pawn on g6. But can you see how my pieces, they bristle with energy? His queen, his two rooks are not in the game at the moment. In fact, the queen is in Siberia here. She's
Yeah.
not doing anything here.
Yeah.
You
No.
know?
And it's
So
A2 pawn is
what
even
does he do?
available to grab here, but it's too slow.
Yeah, he can't. So he goes knight to g8.
Knight to G8.
Now
Okay.
he attacks my dark bishop with the knight. So what do? I capture the bishop on g7.
King takes.
Then king must take. Now what to do from here? His bishop on d7 is on pre, but on the other hand again, he's got a rook that can take a2, and then the queen eyes b2. So I need to be careful. So just thematically, what happens here? Queen to g5. Queen to g5 is extremely powerful, because what it does is it defends the white bishop, and it threatens rook to h7 as well. So he needs to get out of the discover check. So what does he do? He goes king to f8.
Okay.
Now I had a simple win, but I wanted to go for the sexy option. I'll explain why. I should have played that rook to h8. Then that is a killer move, because now I threaten queen to h6 mate, and he can't do anything about it.
Uh-huh.
That would have been the quiet but deadly move.
Yes.
And only after, instead, what I did was to capture the rook on d7,
Okay, rook takes D7.
because d7 actually protected f5, because there was a potential check there. But so the rook taking the bishop allowed me a check there, but rook to h8 would have been more forceful and more immediate.
Okay.
So now he's absolutely dead. What does he then do? He plays rook to c7. There's no other move which he can do. Then I play queen to f5, check. Only move he has left is knight to f6.
Okay.
Now, what is the sexy winning move here?
Okay,
I'm going to
guys.
pause here.
Why to
I'm
play?
sure,
Why
I'm
to play,
sure,
anyone?
I'm sure people watching this will find the one move winning move here.
Yeah,
The
and
sexy
by,
Reasonably
option,
obvious.
Calvin.
by the way,
It's reasonably obvious.
Dr. Shabir mentioning earlier on bishop h8, bishop f8 is a good tactic. Yeah, I've seen that one, Dr. Shabs. That's a good one usually, but not necessary at that time. Let's see. Big
What's
Spy
the
Bosovic
winning
says.
move here?
Big Spy Bosovic says queen takes f6. Hibernator says queen
Exactly.
f6.
Queen to f6.
Looks like our
Queen to
chat.
f6.
Looks like our chat is sexy indeed. So they
Yeah,
found it.
you see, you need to go for what's pretty on the eye.
Yeah, no,
So
this one
when I
does
play,
definitely stand out.
I take f6 and then rook to h8 in the corner is checkmate.
So did the black resign after queen f6?
Yeah, after queen to f6, he did not want to give me the honor
Okay.
of mating him.
Let's just
And
show
then
the
he
viewers what it would
resigned.
have looked like. So after
Yeah,
takes
so
and
after
then
queen to f6, he resigns, but that was actually aesthetically pleasing, very easy on the eye. And when I have insomnia, I think of this move. That there is something called the royal game giving us tremendous pleasure. But
yeah,
queen
no.
to f6, I still have a smile on my face. I think, yo, that's very pretty.
Yeah, no,
A
definitely a
nice,
nice way
a
to
nice
end.
finish there,
Definitely.
Fasieg. A nice finish.
Yeah,
Lovely
but you
game.
see, what's actually good about it is I was able to seize upon a simple mistake. He overreached. He should not have taken my knight on a4. That was actually overreaching, and I was able to pounce on that with e5. If I did not have e5, um, he would have won. But I saw it, and then what actually followed was very thematic, but I had to play reasonably accurate.
Yes. No, a wonderful game there. Maybe what we could do, Fasieg and Calvin, is have a look at the Murat game, since that also follows like a dragon, and then we can go to the Goldberg game.
Yeah.
Okay, the Murat game. Let's have a look at it. But yeah, well played. Brilliant game there, Fasieg. Like the way you slayed the dragon over there. Okay, let's switch over to the next one, guys. So this is white pieces. Okay, Fasieg's got the white pieces here against
Okay,
Murat.
just give me a second, okay?
Okay.
Give me a second here quickly.
Calvin, but I think the dragon always allows itself for these attacking sequences, which is always nice, because in this game we saw the A file and the H file at the same time. You have these two pawns going to open up lines. So, and I think that is what how chess really should be played, in my opinion. You mustn't have fear. You must go for your lines. And I mean, Benny Levine is a good player, and he knows his chess. So, he also goes for the lines, pawn to A4, queen b8 is a nice little sequence. Queen b8 and rook c8 as well. So I mean, let's give credit to both players. I mean, they went for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, look,
I mean, if you're playing the dragon, then you should welcome such types of type of play, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just tell you the reason why I made the point of studying the dragon quite a bit. That experience I had in PE when I overreached, and had I kept calm, I could very well have won that tournament. But this is also I must actually credit Gordon Lawrence, my friend and colleague at Mariana. We kind of designed our own approach to this. So let's go with e5. C5. So all of this is quite standard. D6.
So just hang on, Fasieg. So this is the Murat game we're looking at now.
This is the Murat game, yeah.
Okay.
Against
right.
this was Western Province closed in the non-racial era, organized by Western Province Chess Association. Let me just add that. And he was the top player at Grassy Park in the early 80s.
Okay.
So D6, D4, CD, knight to D4. All of this is absolutely standard. If you know the dragon, knight to C3, then G6.
Okay, here we go again.
Then bishop to E3. Now bishop to G7, F3. I'll just whiz through this quickly because this is all standard. Knight to C6, queen to D2, E castles, I castle. Now it's about
bishop C4
who's
first.
trying to bluff him. So bishop to C4. The reason why you play bishop to C4, you want, in chess we all know, put your pieces on a square where it can do maximum damage, right? That's what we all know. That's what we can taught. Bishop to D7, then
you castle.
Yeah. Okay. Then then he played knight to E5.
Yeah. Bishop B3.
Bishop to B3.
And this is this maneuver that you mentioned in the previous game. That's
C8. Yeah. Now
the standard
you see
idea.
the whole point about Sicilian. Those of us who play the Sicilian, you need to exploit the C file, the semi-open file. That's standard, and often you sacrifice on C3. You're willing to sacrifice that to spoil the structure of white. Then I play H4. Now H4 is standard. G4 is a bit too slow, and the move nowadays is simply G5 to impede the attack of white. So H4. Then he played knight to C4. The benefit of knight to C4 is now he forces me to get rid of my white bishop. So bishop C4, rook to C4. Now here it becomes interesting. Okay. I play H5. I sacrifice the pawn. He takes it. Knight to H5. G4. Knight to F6. So I have sacrificed a pawn. And the H file is open. Now, knight D to E2. The benefit of that is I support my knight on C3. Now he plays rook to E8, which is a bit too slow. He should have gone queen to A5 immediately, and afterwards rook to C8. But he feared bishop to H6 because then I'll be able to get rid of his dark bishop that way. So it's maybe not completely an error. Then bishop to D4. Now this is Gordon Lawrence and me. We sat for maybe 2 hours configuring moves and so on. So bishop to D4 is unusual. The point of attack goes from D2 and H6, or sorry, E3 to H6 to actually D4. So that bishop becomes a bit of a monster bishop. It nullifies his dark bishop, and I'll explain why. Okay, then he goes queen to H5, which is thematic, and it lends support to the attack on the queen side. Now I do something, again, this is Gordon Lawrence and me, I go rook to H2. Now that may seem very slow, and not many people approach the dragon in this way. Then he goes B5. Now he's going to hit me on A4, and then my pawn on A2 is under attack. So I go king to B1, which is a necessary prophylactic move. Otherwise, I'm going to actually battle. So if it indeed does go to B4, I'll go knight to D5. Now he goes bishop to e6. Now we can see his plan. The bishop goes to e6 because he's now actually planning to hit me on a2 with the queen at the right moment. So I can see that. So I go b3 to actually cut off the point of attack. But now I weaken c3. So what you actually gain on the one hand by nullifying the bishop on e6, I weaken c3. Now, it's not recommended to weaken c3, but I've reinforced it with d4 and with a knight on e2. So, of course, he needs to move it back. He goes to rook to c3, sorry, c6, and maybe he can switch to a6 later on. And now I go rook from the rook on d1 to h1. Then he reinforces. He goes rook e8 to c8. Now we can see his plan. I the h file. He eyes the c file. Okay, I'm going to pause here and ask the readers or the viewers, what is White's winning move here? I'm actually giving it away because I'm saying it's a winning move.
Okay, so why to play, guys? Can the viewers give some suggestions? So knight d2 London, is that Karpov over there? I see. I wanted to say that, and then Shabir also in the chat box said nice Karpovian move, and then Shabir
it's from the 1974 candidates, Calvin Karpov versus Korchnoi, which was actually the candidates. The final, because Fischer of course didn't play, but that's where it was played, knight de2 for the first time.
Yeah, definitely rang a bell over there. So guys, why to play over there?
Why to play?
And then Shabir also just mentioning here, bishop h6, then bishop h8, then bishop g5 idea, attacking f6 with the threat of e5 plans, also effective. So that's also another idea. Yes, sounds like Shabir has also been spending a lot of time on the dragon. He loves these type of attacking positions.
Okay, what's the winning move? Anybody in the chat box?
Some suggestions from the viewers, please. Any idea, guys?
Okay, let me put you out of your misery. Rook to h7.
Oof, okay.
Cunning attack.
Rook takes h7. That's the whole point of doubling up, getting more force on the h file.
Calvin. Nice one. It isn't there to look pretty only.
Yes, nice. And so Mark Lewis as well in the chat, by the way. Mark Lewis in the chat also suggested rook h7. I think we are a bit delayed, so well done to Mark, by the way. But please, Fasieg, continue.
Okay, so he's forced to attack because otherwise it's rook to g7 followed by queen to h6 and then mate. So he's forced to attack. Sorry, he's forced to take.
Okay.
Then obviously bishop to g7.
Yeah.
And his attack is a little bit too slow. He can't get in b4. He can't get in rook to c3. He must take queen to g7. Okay. That's forced.
Yeah.
Right? Now I go queen to h6 check. Obviously, if he moves back, he gets mated.
Yeah, so the king has to step forward.
So he moves up. Now, again, the sexy move here is I can't just give check, otherwise on g5, otherwise he will simply go back to g7. What is aesthetically pleasing about this is I go e5.
Nice.
Check.
Okay, so I'm just daring to put the question out there. What if king takes e5? What's gonna happen? King
to e5, then queen to f4, checkmate.
Oof, okay. So the game didn't end like that, guys, but that would have been a nice way as well.
If he, which is what he did, he took with the pawn, de, then I played knight to e4, checkmate.
Another mate, another pretty finish. Lovely stuff.
Very pretty finish.
Okay, so my question to you, sorry, Lennon, my question to you, Fasieg. How much did you have to think during this game? You mentioned that you and Gordon, was it Gordon? You guys came up with a setup of doubling up on the h file, look, bishop d4. All of this seems pretty planned.
The idea behind it was to put the dark bishop on d4.
Yeah.
And to double up on the h file.
So I mean,
but
after that,
I still had to get the sequence right. And if I got it wrong, remember he's got a lot of pull on the C file. He's got the bishop on E6, so I had to get my timing. If
And
I'm
that-
out by one move,
yeah, of course. And
this
that
is
B3 move, I
about
like the
dragon.
B3 move, stopping that play over there just at the right
Yeah,
moment.
you need to make a judgment call. If I did not play, for example, B3, you know, that the bishop on E6 would have come into its own.
Yeah.
So I got the
Nullified the
sequence
diagonal.
perfectly right. You know, so this was also very easy on the eye. You know,
very nice.
Fasieg, you're a very attacking player, and Fasieg, I'm just mindful of the time. Perhaps I'd like us to have a look at the Howard Goldberg game, because Fasieg, I enjoyed that game quite a lot when you showed it to me.
Yeah, no, look, that's a very short one. And also it was very significant because what he did was you see, he was almost invincible as a schoolboy. I must be honest. He had tremendous support from people at Cape Town Chess Club. You know, that's one of our, used to be our top clubs until, you know, Steinitz took over from them. So just to whiz through this game very quickly, and I'll actually get to the point where I had to make a major. So it's E4, C5.
Okay. Just hang on. Let's just get to this. This is against Goldberg, right?
Goldberg, yeah.
Okay, so E4, C5. You've got the white pieces.
Knight to F3, then D6, D4. He captures. Knight to D4, Knight F6, Knight C3, and then he plays Knight of. Okay. Now I used to play Bishop to C4, which is what Fischer used to do. Then at a certain point in my career, I went for Bishop to G5. Now this is a variation I know extremely well. This I used to take books on it, and this is one opening I knew well. So obviously the key move is E6. Now F4, you do F4 to give yourself space, and with a view to target E5 at the right time, if appropriate. Of course, he plays bishop to E7 to unpin himself. Then I place queen to F3. Queen to F3 serves several purposes. It's a way to attack, but also it frees the queen, so that it allows you then to castle queenside. Then he plays queen to C7. I castle queenside. Now the correct move here is knight B to D7. Now for the viewers and Calvin and Lyndon, if you get one move out of sequence, you can be lost. That is what happens in chess. One move can be different between winning and losing. Here, he had to play knight B to D7. Instead, he played B5. That is a fatal mistake. And I knew instinctively, look, I told myself, this is wrong. I thought for 10, 15 minutes. And without knowing exactly where it's going to end, instinctively, I told myself, E5 is weakened. I'm going to hit the rook on A8. So I play E5. Now, it's only one way. Now, the F6, the knight is attacked, and the rook on A8 is attacked. Only way to defend is bishop to B7, which is what he played. Obviously, my move is queen to G3 to reinforce the pawn on E5.
Yeah.
So it captures. So DE, DE. Now I still attack him. Now you can go knight to H5, or you can go knight to D7, and he goes knight to D7. So I actually capture first thing. I capture that, so he's no longer able to castle. I can't be greedy and take the pawn on G7 because the queen and the knight on D7 supports e5, and then I've got no attack. So what do? I play queen to g5 check. And then he goes king to f8.
King e8, it says in my notes here.
Okay, king to e8. King
Okay,
to e8.
all right.
Now, this is where, now after years later, I found out that this sacrifice is actually quite common and thematic in the Naidov. But for a schoolboy of 16 to over the board to refute this against what was then the top player in the Western Cape took top in a junior took some doing. If I don't have the right follow up, then my pawn on e5 is lost, and he's also got b4 going. He can even castle, and I don't have a sufficient attack. It's only one move here, and I'm happy to say I found it over the board. I played bishop takes pawn, the pawn on b5.
A sacrifice.
A sacrifice here. Now, what this does is I have now developed all my pieces. Both his rooks have not moved. His knight hasn't moved, and he's uncastled. Now, that alone should tell me. You see, I worked in a simple way. Look, the two rooks are out of play. He's uncastled. I must force the issue. If he ignores my sacrifice, I'm simply have an extra pawn. Klar, finish. I have that. I've got lots of hits on him. There's a knight. There's the pawn on e6 that I can take at a certain point. There's a pawn on g7. So what does he do? He takes my bishops. Then I take the pawn with my c3 knight, attacking his queen. Okay. What does he do now? He has only one decent move. He plays queen to b6. Now, what then happens that everything collapses like a deck of cards. Now, knight to d6.
Okay, the king has to go to f8.
King has to go to f8, and then I bring the other rook in. Now, what have we noticed? Both these rooks haven't moved. The one knight hasn't moved. I'm almost like two rooks up. All my pieces are in play, every single one. And Calvin, you will know this, some people that you coach, and London, you've played at the highest level. You utilize your army to the fullest, then you win. So I've got multiple attacks. He is dead loss, and he told me he knew it. He just took a chance. He played knight to e5, which is, of course, yeah, he must have had a brain fade, but isn't much he can do, because I threatened knight to e6 because the rook on the f file is dead. So he played knight to e5, and then of course he played knight to e6. Nice. And he died because he's dead after that.
King g8 and queen g7 might
come what's actually good about the game is the sacrifice on b5, and to find out over the board in 10 minutes just on instinct. I think that said something against the likes of Howard. Yeah, that will stand out as a highlight as well. So I think those are three of my better games. Pity there isn't time. I would have shown you the game against Fasieg Harun, where I afterwards started playing the French, and I find many people can't cope with the French. They play advanced variation, and you hit them on c5, and they don't know how to cope. And then I had my own peculiar way of actually playing the French. And there was one game against Fasieg Harun where he makes one error, and the game and it actually goes to pieces. I get a fantastic outpost, and things flow from there. But I don't know how we are doing with time. But that was also quite a good game. But yeah, I suppose we're out of time. But those are three of my so-called better games.
But Fasieg, what we're going to do is that I have played through those games and I've enjoyed them so much that I've told Calvin that if you allow us, we're going to invite you one Saturday morning to do a little coaching session with us, because some of the games are very instructive, like you've just
Yeah.
explained to us now. And we'd like to go over those games as well. And I'm sure, as you can see from the audience and the comments in the chat box, Dr. Bouah has got here excellent tactics. Maxwell Solomon has got. This is where I've seen my tactics and how I grew as a junior, breaking through to the adult ranks. So quite a number of favorable comments. And I think Fasieg, Calvin, we will have to make a date with Mr. Fasieg Manie for somewhere in May or June when he has a bit of time in the school holidays, and then come and show us those. Some of those games of yesteryear. Fasieg, if you would have some time for Calvin
No,
and myself.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now
Absolutely.
let's do that.
I'll be honored to do that. Absolutely.
Okay,
Fasieg,
so yeah, no,
Calvin.
that was great. Thanks, Fasieg. It was lovely games. In fact, here in the chat box, King Oster was saying, yeah, that Fasieg also played the Sicilian or only viciously dissected. Very instructive and vibrant games. Thanks again, Fasieg, London, and Calvin. Thanks, King Oster. By the way, from our first subscriber, Early B, thanks so much, sir. I know you have made the difference in so many people's lives. This makes me appreciate everything in my educators have done for me along the way. Thanks, Ali B. And yeah, no, that's very entertaining stuff, Fasieg. Thanks for taking out the time for joining us.
A
And
pleasure.
yeah, from my side, it was absolutely nice hearing about the olden days as well. I started playing chess. I don't know, I've mentioned this on the show a couple of times probably. Started playing chess probably 2001 or something like this. So all of this is pretty new to me, but great to hear. And yeah, no, it's been great. So thanks a lot for joining.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Fasieg, we've enjoyed it, and the trip down memory lane from the 1970s. You create that link for us, because of course many people always wonder, where did schoolboy chess come from? When did we start playing, and when did Western Province Chess Association and where did Mariana come from? And of course Mariana, a league winner, and Mariana won the South African Club Championship in 2017. So fantastic pedigree as well for you, your club, for Lavender Hill High School, of which you were a principal for many, many years. And those are the type of inspirational stories that we are trying to bring out, and that will remain on here. And Calvin, will be putting this onto the YouTube in a week's time or so that you will be also able to, Fasieg, yourself and the viewers, able even to share this video that we've made with you now with others broadly as well, because I think your views on education, your philosophy that you've espoused and implemented has gone a long way, in my opinion, to also uplift the communities of Lavender Hill and us as a chess community generally. So from my side, Fasieg, thank you very much for the time. Any final word from you to the viewers tonight?
No, just to Calvin, first and foremost, it's wonderful to have this particular channel. You know, somebody from South Africa, and Calvin just from my side. Thanks for your wonderful work, and I hope that your channel can be supported, and people even to make a financial contribution. I will certainly do so in this week. I think you should be supported first and foremost. But there's something about the wonderful game of chess. But I kind of stopped playing, and Shabir has done amazingly well. He's kept at it over the years. But chess has afforded me a tremendous amount of pleasure. I was able to travel parts of the country. Never fortunate enough to play in the Olympiad, uh, like like you, London, a few times. You've traveled abroad, etc. I was able to go nationally a few times, Eastern Cape, Johannesburg, Durban, PE, and so on. But chess is absolutely a wonderful game. There are few games that can afford one this kind of pleasure, the logic of it, to see a beautiful queen sacrifice, and that's how thematic things are and is logical. There are few games. If you take soccer also beautiful game, but at 1-0 wins, it's boring, up and down. But chess, that's the theme behind it, the thinking behind it, the psychology behind it. And Sabir, seeing his interview on Cape TV the other day, he mentions a good point about the psychology of chess, how you actually play a move and you bear in mind who you actually playing and you try to bluff the opposition. But I suffer from verbal diarrhea. I can go on and on about it and its marvel and its beauty. But you know exactly what I'm talking about because the two of you have played at the highest level. So thanks also to the two of you. And Lyndon, your contribution to the channel and your books and the reflections that you have, it goes a long way to capture and keep alive what's happening in chess in South Africa. So kudos to both of you, and thank you for having me on your show, and all the best, going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so
Fasieg,
much.
thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thanks, Lyndon, as well, and just thank you for the kind words, Fasieg, and for once again taking out your time to join us, and thanks for the support. And now I just want to ask Lyndon one last question. Of course, you guys know what time it is. I think this will be our second last episode for this season, if I'm not mistaken, Lyndon. So who are we seeing next week on Reflections?
So Calvin, I'm just finalizing our next guest. He's indicated that he may be traveling next week, so I'm going to finalize the guest tomorrow, and then
Okay.
of course on Sunday afternoon I will inform everybody. But as you said, Calvin, it's probably this is our third last show, and the interesting thing, we've had about 13 guests since January. On the show, and of course what I will be doing now going forward for the next few weeks is making a few phone calls, contacting a few of the players, and seeing who's available for our next season that will start in a few months time as well. So I'm sure we'll be looking forward to that. But Fasieg, I look forward to seeing you at some stage again. And Calvin, we hopefully we'll see you soon. And I think on Saturday we may be doing some commentary or something on one of your next tournaments as well. So we'll look forward to that. Fasieg, you enjoy, and to the viewers, thank you very much for the
Thank you very much.
comments as well.
Okay, thanks guys. Thanks so much. And by the way, London mentioned the show this weekend is the knockouts of the Paradigm Chess 30 champs. So don't miss out on that one, guys. See you this weekend. Thanks, Fasieg. Thanks, London. Enjoy the rest of your
Thanks,
evening,
Fasieg.
guys.
See
Cheers,
you.
cheers.
Thank you very much,
Right.
guys.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Right. Bye.
Bye. Bye.